Police make an arrest 40 years after a woman is murdered in her Cherry Hills home. Sylvia Quayle's body found in August of 1981. She had been sexually assaulted, stabbed, and shot. Kelly Worthman joins us from our 24-hour news studio tonight, CBSN. And Kelly, talk about not giving up on a case. We did learn more today about that suspect.
On August 4th, 1981, Sylvia Quayle's life was cut short under mysterious circumstances. A loving sister and daughter, Sylvia Quayle was only 34 years old when she was found dead in her apartment in Cherry Hills Village, with a white towel draped over her face. Despite an extensive investigation, the killer managed to elude law enforcement, and the case went cold for years, and it seemed like it might never be solved. For over 4 decades, her brutal murder remained one of Colorado's most perplexing cold cases. What could be the motive behind this heinous act? How did the investigators finally solve the case? Welcome back to Cold Case Files, where we cover notorious cold cases from history. Today, we'll delve into the mysterious case of Sylvia Quayle, a 40-year-old cold case that was finally solved in 2021. But first, if you are new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, please consider clicking the subscribe button, as it helps us and motivates us to create more content for you. So without further ado, let's dive right into this mystery. Today's case takes us to Cherry Hills Village, an affluent home rule municipality located in Arapahoe County, Colorado. It has a population of around 6,500 people and is known for its large estates and luxury homes, as well as its picturesque natural scenery. The city has a strong sense of community and offers a high quality of life to its residents, with excellent schools, parks, and recreational activities. It is also home to the Cherry Hills Country Club, which has hosted several major golf tournaments over the years. It is here in this peaceful municipality that a horrific act took place in 1981. Sylvia Quayle, the eldest daughter of William and Mary Quayle, was born on September 23, 1946 in Cherry Hills Village. From a young age, Sylvia displayed a remarkable spirit, with an infectious laugh that could brighten anyone's day. Her vivacious and friendly nature was admired by everyone in her community. She had a heart of gold and was always ready to lend a hand to anyone in need. Sylvia's love for her younger sister Jo Quayle knew no bounds. She cherished her little sister and showered her with affection and care. Sylvia's kindness and generosity were well known in her community. Her selflessness and willingness to help others without a second thought earned her the admiration and respect of all those who knew her. Sylvia Quayle was a woman of many talents. Her positivity and ambition were evident in all aspects of her life. Sylvia had a keen interest in history and architecture, which led her to pursue a career in the field after graduating from Englewood High School in 1964. Sylvia's passion for architecture ran deep in her veins, and she was fortunate to have an uncle, Wesley Quayle, who was one of the most renowned architects in the area. Sylvia would often spend hours poring over her uncle's various blueprints and designs, seeking inspiration for her own projects. Despite the societal norms of the time, Sylvia was not afraid to pursue her passions and ambitions. She was a trailblazer for women in the field of architecture, proving that with hard work and dedication, anything is possible. Through her positive attitude, kindness, and unbridled ambition, Sylvia Quayle left an indelible mark on those who knew her, and her legacy continues to inspire young women to follow their dreams and pursue their passions, no matter what challenges they may face. Sylvia was a true multifaceted gem, with an array of talents and passions that she pursued with determination and enthusiasm. Her love for creativity was evident in her hobbies, especially her pottery work, which left everyone in awe. Her friends and family couldn't get enough of her unique and charming pottery pieces, and it was always a treat to receive one as a gift. But amongst all her hobbies, cooking held a special place in her heart, and she didn't take it lightly. She even decided to turn her passion into a business venture and started her own wedding cake business called The Buttery, which was a huge hit among her clients. Her delicious and perfectly crafted cakes left everyone craving more. Despite being so fiercely independent, Sylvia never forgot the importance of family. She shared a close bond with her parents and younger sister Jo. Her infectious positivity and kind nature was a reflection of the loving family she had, and it was evident in the way she treated those around her. The bond between Sylvia Quayle and her parents was unbreakable. Living only a few steps away from their daughter's home that was on the 3800 block of South Ogden Street, William and Mary Quayle would begin their day with a warm cup of coffee and a loving conversation with their eldest child. Sylvia's parents were the most significant part of her life, and her personality had a positive impact on her family's daily routine. They couldn't imagine what horror was waiting for them. The Quayle family had no idea that August 3, 1981 would mark a tragic day that they would never forget. As they sat together for their regular morning coffee, Sylvia promised to visit again the next morning. Sylvia left for work as usual, but little did anyone know that this would be the last time they would ever see her. That evening, Sylvia spoke to her sister on the phone. They laughed and chatted like they always did, not realizing that this would be their final conversation. The next morning, on August 4th, Sylvia failed to show up at her parents' house for their usual morning coffee. Her parents grew worried, knowing that Sylvia would never miss their daily ritual without informing them. They tried calling her landline, but there was no answer. William, Sylvia's father, now grew even more concerned and rushed to her house, which was only about 150 feet away. As he approached her house, William's heart raced with fear. He had a bad feeling that something was terribly wrong. Sadly, when he arrived, his worst fears turned into a dark reality. It was a day that the Quayle family would never forget. Upon his arrival, William was struck by an eerie silence that permeated the residence. As he approached the front door, he noticed with alarm that both the security screen and the wooden entrance were flung wide open, beckoning him inside. As he cautiously stepped into the living room, a sense of foreboding settled over him like a heavy shroud. And then he saw her, Sylvia, lying motionless on the ground, her form splayed out in an unnatural position. Her arms were raised above her head as if in a final desperate plea for help. It was a gruesome sight, one that William would never be able to erase from his memory. With a shaking hand, he reached out and pulled the white towel from Sylvia's face, obscuring the most vulnerable part of her body from view. It was a small gesture of respect for the daughter who meant the whole world to him. But in that moment, it felt like the only thing he could do. William, with shaking hands, called 911 for help at approximately 7:57 a.m., and officers Gerald Marquise and Jack DeVoley from the Cherry Hills Village Police Department immediately responded to 3800 South Ogden Street. What they found was a chilling and gruesome sight. Detective Harry Whitman and Detective Sergeant Richard Krause also arrived to aid in the investigation. The crime scene was enough to make even the most seasoned police officers shudder in horror. The police department knew that they needed all the help they could get to solve this heinous crime. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation was called in to assist in the investigation and processing of the crime scene. The presence of experienced CBI agents such as Walt Chin, Wayne Bryant, and Howard Gillespie brought some hope that the perpetrator of this gruesome crime would be brought to justice. The crime scene was a chilling sight to behold. When the detectives stepped in, their eyes scanned every corner of the room. It was immediately apparent how the perpetrator had left the residence, with both the security screen door and the front door wide open. The living room was in disarray, with bloodstains evident on the floor. The blood seemed to be concentrated in certain areas, including near the front door and a few feet from Sylvia's lifeless body. As the detectives approached the body, they noticed a medium-sized kitchen knife with a silver blade covered in blood lying near her. To their surprise, they also found a white blouse-style shirt lying over the handle of the knife, possibly placed there by the killer. It was a scene straight out of a horror movie, and the detectives knew they had a long and difficult road ahead of them in trying to solve this heinous crime. As Detective Whitman examined the interior of the scene, a chill ran down his spine. The sight of Sylvia's lifeless body lying on the floor, with her red shirt covering her face, was enough to make his stomach churn. But what caught his attention were the visible marks on Sylvia's body. Her hands, covered in blood, seemed to have fought for her life. The broken fingernails were a telltale sign of the struggle she must have put up. As he observed her neck, the marks on it appeared to be in the shape of fingers, indicating that she had been strangled. The red marks on her inner thighs were a mystery that would need to be solved. In the bedroom, the blood-soaked pillow caught the detective's eye. The amount of blood on it was indicative of the severity of the attack. As he looked around, he noticed that the telephone cord was cut, severing any hope of Sylvia seeking help. It was evident that the killer had planned the attack meticulously and made sure that Sylvia was isolated and helpless. As Detective Whitman continued to examine the scene, a sense of dread washed over him. This was no ordinary crime. This was a horrific act that needed to be solved as soon as possible. When Detective Whitman examined the exterior of the residence, he couldn't help but notice the peculiar state of the exterior phone line that connected to the victim's house. It was carelessly yanked down and left draped across the hood of Sylvia's 1974 brown Corvette, as if it were some macabre decoration. The investigation revealed that a garden hose was the culprit behind this sabotage, thrown over the line and ruthlessly tugged down, leaving behind telltale black marks. It was clear that the perpetrator was not one to shy away from employing makeshift tools to achieve their nefarious ends. The assailant also left behind evidence of multiple attempts to gain entry. Detectives noticed a small hole in the screen of a bedroom window, a sign of an unsuccessful attempt. However, the bathroom window was not so lucky. Its screen was missing and was later found hidden among some tall weeds 50 feet away from the home. The wooden frame showed signs of tampering, with a pry mark on the bottom, and it was discovered to have been left unlocked, making it an easy target for the intruder. After the examination of the crime scene, Sylvia's body was sent for an autopsy. The brutal murder of Sylvia Quayle left a gruesome trail of evidence. After the autopsy, which was conducted by Arapahoe County Coroner John Wood, the shocking truth about Sylvia's death was revealed. Sylvia had been shot in the head with a .22 caliber bullet, stabbed 3 times in her upper back, strangled, and likely also assaulted. Dr. Wood, a seasoned coroner, swabbed various parts of Sylvia's body to preserve any potential forensic evidence, including microscopic slides created from the swabs obtained from inside her body. In his report, Dr. Wood determined that Sylvia died due to exsanguination caused by laceration of the heart, aorta, and both lungs, due to multiple stab wounds to the posterior chest. Additionally, he identified a gunshot wound to the head and removed 2 bullet fragments from Sylvia's brain. The subsequent autopsy report revealed the horrific nature of her final moments. It was a combination of a gunshot wound, multiple stab wounds, strangulation, and potential assault that took her life away. Without a doubt, Sylvia's death was the result of an extremely violent act committed by an unknown assailant. Dr. Wood listed the manner of death as a homicide, leaving law enforcement officials to work tirelessly to bring the perpetrator to justice. The case had all the hallmarks of a classic whodunit, with plenty of forensic evidence left behind to give investigators hope that they would soon apprehend the culprit. But as the days turned into weeks and then months, it became increasingly clear that this was no ordinary investigation. Despite their best efforts, the local police department was struggling to make headway, hindered by a lack of technology and the absence of any concrete leads. Even the smallest pieces of evidence seemed to lead nowhere. The unknown bodily fluid found at the scene was little more than a mystery, with DNA technology still in its infancy in the early 1980s. Without a registered sex offender profile to work from, investigators were left scratching their heads, wondering how they were ever going to catch a break in this seemingly unsolvable case. The crime scene of Sylvia Quayle's murder was carefully examined by detectives, who collected around 140 pieces of evidence. It wasn't until 2 years after the killing that a significant discovery was made. In 1983, forensic technicians used an alternate light source to reveal potential foreign material on the orange area rug which was collected where Sylvia Quayle had taken her last breath. Through further analysis, the material was identified as semen. This discovery provided a crucial piece of evidence for the investigation and gave detectives a new direction to pursue in their quest for justice. The case of Sylvia's murder had been lying in a state of dormancy, buried deep in the archives, with little to no progress being made for years. However, a sudden glimmer of hope shone upon the investigators on the horizon in 1985, when Otis Elwood Toole, a notorious drifter and serial killer, confessed to her killing. He described in detail the surroundings of her home trees and hedges to the detective, raising hopes that justice would finally be served. However, doubt soon crept in about Toole's confessions, along with those of his companion, Henry Lee Lucas. Lucas, who died in a Texas prison in 2001, claimed responsibility for hundreds of murders, but authorities were only able to confirm a few. One of the most infamous crimes that Toole confessed to was the abduction and murder of Adam Walsh, the son of America's Most Wanted host John Walsh in Hollywood, Florida. Despite Toole later retracting his confession to Adam's murder, years later Hollywood police officials declared that they had closed the case, convinced that Toole was the culprit. Following this confession, investigators believed that he possibly could be the killer of Sylvia. However, in 1993, Bob Gallagher, the Arapahoe County District Attorney, dropped the charges against Toole. This was due to DNA testing on the evidence which showed that Toole was not the source of the DNA found at the crime scene 12 years prior. It seemed like a sudden gust of wind had blown away the thin strand of hope that had kept Quayle's family and investigators going. The case went back to square one. In 1995, a piece of the carpet that was saved for future testing proved to be a crucial piece of evidence. The sample was sent to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation for testing, and 5 years later, in 2000, the results showed an unknown male DNA profile. Excitement grew as investigators plugged the profile into the FBI's combined DNA index system, CULPRIT. But alas, no match was found. The case of Sylvia Quayle's murder had left the law enforcement department grappling for answers for many years. Every possible lead was pursued with utmost diligence, and the latest technologies were implemented in the investigation, yet the case remained unsolved. Meanwhile, Sylvia's family anxiously waited for any news or updates on the case. Despite all their efforts, the mystery of Sylvia's murder remained shrouded in darkness for decades, leaving many questions unanswered and the family in deep pain. After years of silence, a breakthrough was made in Sylvia Quayle's case. In 2019, Metro Denver Crime Stoppers teamed up with United Data Connect, a company founded by former Denver District Attorney Mitch Morrissey, specializing in genetic genealogy. They used this method that had already helped solve numerous cold cases across the country. This innovative technique was behind the identification of the notorious Golden State Killer in California. In January 2020, Cherry Hills Village cold case detectives and investigator Matt Hannigan from the 18th Judicial District Attorney's Office approached Crime Stoppers with renewed interest in the case. With advancements in technology, it was now possible to further the investigation using state-of-the-art familial DNA investigations. And so, after 4 months of dedicated work, on May 26, 2020, the company's technicians had a name: David Dwayne Anderson. The discovery of Anderson's identity had brought a glimmer of hope for justice in Sylvia's case after so many years. The sleepy town of Cozad, Nebraska had no idea that one of its residents had been implicated in a brutal murder case dating back to 1981. David Dwayne Anderson, now 61 years old, had been leading a quiet and seemingly uneventful life in this small town with a sparse population. But little did anyone know that over 30 years ago, Anderson was living just a couple of miles away in Englewood when the tragic murder of 34-year-old Sylvia Quayle shook the Cherry Hills Village community to its core. As investigators delved deeper into David Dwayne Anderson's past, a pattern of criminal behavior emerged. Anderson had committed at least 8 burglaries in the years following Sylvia Quayle's murder, and in a couple of instances, he had worn gloves to prevent any fingerprints. This revelation only added to the mounting evidence against him. In one burglary, Anderson had even removed a window screen to gain access to the property, just like Sylvia's murderer had done. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fall into place, and it seemed increasingly likely that Anderson was the perpetrator. If found guilty of the murder, Anderson would be facing a lifetime in prison with the possibility of parole after 20 years, the same penalty that was in effect when Sylvia was killed. However, under current state law, first-degree murder convictions carry no possibility of parole. The stakes were high, and the case against Anderson was becoming stronger by the day. On January 16, 2021, Robert Fuller, an investigator from United Data Connect, headed to Cozad to gather Peter's DNA without his knowledge. Fuller carefully monitored Anderson's movements from outside his apartment complex on January 18, 2021, when Anderson tossed 2 trash bags into a nearby dumpster. The bags contained 15 items that could hold Anderson's genetic material, which could provide the break detectives needed to solve the decades-old murder case. Detective Fuller's secret mission to collect DNA evidence from David Dwayne Anderson had proven to be a success. He had managed to retrieve several items from Anderson's trash bags, including an interesting assortment of beverages. The recovered items included a vanilla Coke can, a Great Value water bottle, a spiced rum bottle, and a Michelob Ultra beer bottle. With the items individually bagged as evidence, Fuller met with an investigator at a travel stop in Sterling, Colorado, and handed over the evidence for further analysis by the CBI. After a week of investigation, on January 29, 2021, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation delivered a long-awaited report to detectives. The report revealed that a male DNA profile obtained from the vanilla Coke can that had been confiscated from Anderson actually did match the DNA found on multiple items of evidence collected during Sylvia Quayle's homicide investigation. The DNA evidence was conclusive, and it connected Anderson to the crime scene in ways that could not be refuted. Further tests of the collected evidence showed that Anderson's semen was found on the area rug of the crime scene, as well as on swabs taken from Sylvia's body during her autopsy. Not only that, but Anderson's DNA was also detected on a swab taken from Sylvia's left breast. Shockingly, it was discovered that the white towel found over Sylvia's face contained a mixture of her blood and Anderson's semen, making it clear that he was the person responsible for Sylvia's brutal murder. After decades of carrying a dark and deadly secret, David Dwayne Anderson was finally arrested on February 10, 2021 in Nebraska for the murder of Sylvia Quayle. He willingly came back to Colorado to face charges of first-degree murder after deliberation and first-degree felony murder. The prosecutors on the case were determined to bring justice for Sylvia and ensure that Anderson would be held accountable for his actions. As 18th Judicial District Deputy District Attorney Grant Grosgebauer stated, the defendant carried with him a dark secret, a secret that was finally revealed during this trial. After all these years, the truth would finally be brought to light. After a long and arduous legal battle, Anderson, the man accused of murdering Sylvia Quayle more than 40 years ago, has been found guilty. The trial, which ended in a hung jury on March 25, 2022, was retried 3 months later, and the verdict was delivered on June 30, 2022. Anderson, now 62 years old, faced sentencing on August 4, 2022. The punishment he received will be in accordance with the law that was in effect at the time of the murder, which could result in a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 20 years. This verdict marks the end of a long and painful journey for Quayle's family and friends who have waited decades for justice to be served. After almost 40 years, justice was finally served for Sylvia Quayle, a victim of a brutal murder in Cherry Hills Village, Colorado. The founder of United Data Connect, Mitch Morrissey, expressed his sympathy for the Quayle family, particularly for her father who found her lifeless body. The disturbing details of the crime left him reeling as a father of a young woman himself. However, Sylvia's parents were not able to witness their daughter's killer being identified. William Quayle passed away in 1999, and Mary Quayle followed 10 years later. The loss of their daughter left a gaping hole in their hearts which could never be filled. Sylvia's family and friends always forever missed her vivacious personality and her unwavering love for those she held dear. The arrest of the suspect, David Dwayne Anderson, in Nebraska in February 2021 was a long-awaited development, and the subsequent trial was not an easy one. Despite a hung jury in the first trial, the 18th Judicial District prosecutors persisted and finally secured a guilty verdict for Anderson on both counts of first-degree murder after deliberation and felony murder. Deputy District Attorney Grant Grosgebauer spoke of the defendant's dark secret, which had remained hidden for over 40 years until the trial brought it to light. Chief Deputy District Attorney Chris Gallo expressed his gratitude for the investigators and forensic scientists who tirelessly worked on the case, refusing to let time deter them in their pursuit of justice. The verdict brought some sense of closure for Quayle's family, who had been waiting for justice for over 4 decades. District Attorney John Kellner highlighted the significance of the case, showing that justice can prevail even after a long time. This verdict is a warning to any killer who thinks they got away with their crime. Justice may be delayed, but it will eventually catch up to them. After more than 4 decades, justice has finally been served thanks to the tireless efforts of law enforcement and forensic experts who refuse to give up on this case. However, it can't bring back Sylvia and her spirit that can brighten anyone's day. But it's a reminder for all killers that they can't be hidden in any shell and would always be found guilty for their heinous acts. What are your thoughts on this case? Share your opinions in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating true crime stories. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes peeled for the next mystery to unfold.